First time I went to the opera, I want to say maybe 7, 8 years old. I was just a kid, a little kid. And thinking about it now, I was like, I wouldn't let my two kids go off at that age to go see an opera and come home late at night. But probably say about was 7 or 8 years old. I signed up at our gym. Had to just show up there. You know, in the evening time, they took us on a bus, brought us here. It was a slight breeze, so I was blowing, and I kind of got like, ooh, a little chill. Then I heard the orchestra there starting to get the music going. And it was just like, that little memory is what really stuck with me and what really hooked me to want to be a part of the opera and come back to it.
My first experience, I remember seeing the Flying Dutchman. At that time, they didn't have the roof, of course, and the background, it was a sea scene, and there was lightning, and and they were producing this fake lightning, but then you could see back in the background, there was a storm coming from the Jemez Mountains, and you could see the lightning coming. So it just like kind of added to this like whole experience. And I think that that's one of the things that I really enjoy about when I go to the opera. You kind of have what the opera is doing in their production and what they're putting on stage, but then you have the sunset, and you have the rain, and you have the lightning, and that just is, where else are you going to get that experience?
We got to go to, me and my sisters, and I remember sitting in our rows. We had special rows in the opera, and they were pretty good rows, and feeling so special, looking at everything, the buildings, the stage, just everything, and also huddled together with all our Pueblo cousins and friends and kids from other villages, and getting to watch something that we would never see otherwise. It's pretty special.
50 years is probably a second and a half, but it's also the time a child grows up and becomes an adult and leader of a community, ready for a larger responsibility, a larger emotion, a larger imagination of what could be next.
I think what really makes the Santa Fe Opera so distinctive is the total experience. That it's not just about what's on stage, but what's around us. And it has everything to do with being in Santa Fe, of Santa Fe, in the midst of nature, and to feel the overwhelming power of nature when you're sitting in that seat in the Crosby Theater.
Sometimes I remember dozing off and to the sound of the opera singers singing away. And it was just kind of amazing. It was like stepping into a whole other world.
I want to give homage to my brother, John Trujillo, and Jane King Hardiman for bringing the Pueblo Opera Youth Program to Native children. My brother was working as an usher here on regular nights with the tuxedo, and he met Jane King Hardiman here. They were like fireballs, and they got together, they started to do fundraisers, they met with the opera board said, yes, it's important, part of our mission is to provide education, and they did. They had money, the fundraisers that got buses that went to all the 8 northern pueblos to bus them, sack lunches sometimes and dinners, and then 2 intermission drinks. And that was just so exciting. In fact, I remember that they used to be able to take some of the costumes from downstairs in archives, and they would share them with the Pueblo kids. And they kept telling, us Pueblo children, Now remember, this is a different culture. Learn to appreciate it. Learn to see what is behind all of this. And then you will always succeed in life, and you'll see and appreciate what other people are doing out there in the world.
My late husband, Jerry Gasson, Sr., who's originally from Las Vegas, New Mexico, we used to attend the operas frequently, you know, even before the Pueblo Opera Program existed. And, you know, the late John Trujillo, who was one of the founders of the Pueblo Opera Program, used to stand at the, you know, take tickets every year at the gates. And she invited me to join, you know, John and her and Eva Yankee and Reno Yankee from San Juan Pueblo. And, you know, we would have little parties at her house talking about opera and so forth, you know. And so I decided this is one of the routes I'm going to take in my life.
For the Santa Fe Opera, yes, the idea of community engagement has changed in that we think much more deliberately about the experience of the individual or the audience member in designing our programs. And we talk a lot about the objective being bringing people closer to their own personal narrative and have some degree of exchange, I think is essential to our work and is at the foundation in my understanding of the Pueblo Opera Program as well.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Andrea Fellows-Feinberger. I'm Director of Community Engagement for the Santa Fe Opera, and I'm so pleased that you all are here this evening. Tonight we have something quite extraordinary that we don't have at most preview dinners, and that is the presence of our Pueblo Opera Cultural Council.
When I started in education and community engagement in December of 2004, one of the jobs I was assigned was the Pueblo Opera Program, which made me very nervous at the start because I'm from Kansas, and where I lived, I didn't have a lot of exposure to indigenous native communities.
Having to attend the governor's meeting at the 8 Northern Pueblos and explaining about what the opera is. So they said that type of music would hurt our children's ears because they're not used to things like that. But at the beginning, they weren't really coming to the opera. You know, they were, we would take the opera to them. Sharon Geis, she was so wonderful. I'm glad to remember her name. She was from Albuquerque, and her husband was with the New Mexico Gas Company here in New Mexico. And her and I would travel, you know, to all these different pueblos, and we had this little stage, you know, where we would have these little puppets that we would make, you know, these little marionettes, you know, and of the different operas that will be shown for that season. Brian Daly and Tom Morris and several of the other people on staff at the opera would write letters to these big corporate sponsors. And so I would meet these major corporate, you know, donors and talk to them about the Pueblo Opera Program, and they were so generous.
My first memory at the Santa Fe Opera is going to go see Carmen when I was 5. It was very exciting. Since I was a little 5-year-old boy, I was excited that she dies at the end. And I just remember loving the music and loving the story. And then when she died, I was like, okay, that's it. I'm gonna go see it again. So I live in Chicago now, and so I go to the Lyric Opera up there, and it is totally different from the Santa Fe Opera. Santa Fe Opera is a lot more laid back, and it's very personable, and you know, you feel like, oh, I belong here. Whereas the Lyric, it's like a little bit more, oh, I need to get dressed up.
Randy at the time was the chair of the Santa Fe Public Schools Indian Ed, and so we had summer programs in the summer. Randy was able to get the tickets out to the kids that were interested.
This is actually my second time. I came about about 8 years ago, or maybe a little more than that. I brought my other grandson, and he ended up majoring in music at Fort Lewis. But he was the one I brought up here to experience the opera. He was, I think, a junior or sophomore in high school when I brought him up, and he graduates next year. He wants to do music therapy.
I am 9 years old and I'm from Phoenix, Arizona.
It's the first time here to the opera. I've been taking my kids here for 20 plus years, my other ones, and I'm based here in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And my little one, she's never been to the opera, and I'm excited to bring her here.
Mr. Crosby really loved the whole idea of the local children becoming totally involved with opera. It was their first experience, and for them it was just absolutely terrific that they would be doing this. They were the most fabulous audiences you could ever have. Kids were great. They either liked it, or they were very quiet, or they were booed it. And you know, at times Mr. Crosby would get a little excited that, oh, they may be making too much noise and this is the final dress. I think only once did he have to stop for just a few minutes to say shh to the children.
When John Crosby was a boy growing up in New York, he suffered from asthma and had a very difficult time, apparently. And his pediatrician suggested that he should come to New Mexico to the Los Alamos Ranch School. He came here and lived up in Los Alamos in what was later to become the cradle of the Manhattan Project and the Atomic City. And it is said that he fell in love with New Mexico at that time. The legend goes that as a boy, he said one day, I'm going to make an opera company here. I'm going to build an opera house here. After he finished his musical studies at Yale and his service in the Army, he went to his father, who was a very successful Wall Street attorney, and said, I want to build my opera house in Santa Fe, and would you loan me the money to build the theater? John Crosby, out of thin air, conjured this opera company, and he managed to attract major figures to Santa Fe to take part. Primarily the great composer Igor Stravinsky, who was intrigued by this notion of this 29-year-old fellow who had this crazy idea of launching an opera company in Santa Fe.
I am a native Santa Fean, and I was affiliated with Santa Fe Opera for 55 years. A friend of mine knew John Crosby, and he was looking for someone to run the commissary, because back in the day, those offices that are now administrative offices was really like a big dude ranch. And I had wonderful helpers from Tesuque Valley over here. One of the things that I always did at the opera was make sure everybody was comfortable and happy.
I attended the very first youth opera for the Santa Fe Opera, Die Fledermaus, in 1959. And I remember walking into this beautiful space. It was a different theater then, the original theater. I remember so well the morning in 1967 when my father woke me up and said, son, the Santa Fe Opera burned to the ground last night. It was just such a riveting, unreal kind of story. What was amazing is the season continued without interruption at what was then Sweeney Gymnasium, down where the convention center is in Santa Fe now. During that interval, the theater was completely rebuilt. The outpouring of support from all over the United States. I want to help rebuild this opera house in the middle of what they called the desert. They don't know that this is so much more than a desert.
A lot of elders that have passed on, but that were part of the opera that I knew, Blue Corn, Calabasa, Cerulea, Roy Ball. When they tore down, redid this opera, they were so memorable, they gave them a piece of the brick that they had for them and presented it to them, and they were so happy.
I think about the opera. It's based here in Ogapoge, right? I was thinking about this week, for whatever reason, my friend, the late Rena Swenzel, who spoke so powerfully and wrote so powerfully about the power of place, where we can create openings. And for me, this is what's so powerful about what the Santa Fe Opera promise could be to the people that live around this place.
This was in 1975. I was 9 years of age. I remember the rehearsals. We had rehearsals down below, and we had the clothing fittings. We all tried out for something or another. Mine, it was as a ferret, and that was what my role was when I played for the Cunning Little Vixen. You could hear, as we were getting ready in the background, you could hear the people coming through. You can hear all that from behind the stage. Jerry Apodaca was the governor for the state of New Mexico, and his daughter Judy was also one of our performers. It was nice to know that a Pueblo governor was sitting out there watching you, but yet also the state of New Mexico, the governor watching you, because his daughter was involved in that as well.
And that goes along with seeing our native people being the general manager, director of props, lighting, costumes, purchasing, all these positions here at the Santa Fe Opera. We're so close, we're right here. Having that and knowing that you can work here, you can come here, you can be that opera singer, of having that role model, already somebody taking that giant leap of doing something that we all thought was never possible.
The stage of fashion on the opera is yards and yards and yards of fabric. You could do an alteration of a hem to bring it up 3/4 of an inch, which I did when I was 18 years old working in the costume department. And just one of the layers of the hem was 12 yards of fabric. And there was 3 tiers to there's 3 layers that I had to go through. And that's the beauty of opera, is that the abundance of material that you get to work with.
We like to think of that as a sort of the full spectrum of opportunity from a young age. We like to really take opera into the community. We like to be involved in through our school programs. We've developed the high school program through the Young Voices and Young Technicians program. And then, of course, the opera training program, the apprentice program training for singers, and the technical apprentice program as well. And every summer, we have about 115 or 120 apprentices who come through this program. Some return for a second year.
I've seen at least 1 or 2 operas every summer since I was 4. And then I was an usher for 2 seasons. I was a steer and usher, it was my first job. I was a steer and usher when I was 15. And then I came back season of 2019 as an usher, as a regular full-time usher. And I've applied a few times to the apprenticeship program. This is my 3rd or 4th time applying, but first time for stage crew, and now I'm here. And just us working as a team, just our teamwork and how we can very easily and effectively and quickly communicate as a team to all 17 of us, and just seeing that process is really cool. Perseverance, I think, is just the biggest thing, is just being it's gonna get better. It is hard, it is hard work, but it's also a good time. Somehow you're miserable, but you're also having so much fun. I grew up in Santa Clara Pueblo, and I love opera.
So when we think about the Pueblo Opera Program in the past, there was the student-produced opera component, which we now call active learning through opera.
We named the opera The River Where We Dream. If it wasn't for the river, we couldn't live here.
It just doesn't seem like it's all going to come together, but once it all does, it's absolutely great. And you probably, if you tried to do it twice the same way, you probably couldn't.
It was so much better than I thought. Operas are supposed to be boring, but this definitely wasn't boring. We had so much fun. But we were used to wearing the costumes and makeup from our dances at the Pueblo. But the makeup and costumes we wore at the opera were very different.
I would stand outside and talk with the late Mr. John Crosby. You know, he was the director of the opera. And, you know, he was such an interesting man, and he was very accepting to change and you know, the way I felt about it. And he had good friends from San Ildefonso Pueblo, and he would talk about them, you know, and how, you know, how inviting they would be towards him.
I think to a statement which I read when I was general director going through all of John Crosby's papers. He said, in founding the opera, we honor the artists of the caves and the cliffs and the pueblos who have created such beauty here. Beauty in their pottery, their jewelry, their baskets, their weavings, their paintings. We pledge ourselves to honoring that tradition and those artists as we create this opera company. Really has sort of been forgotten in a way, and we need to remind ourselves of what John Crosby himself said about the founding of the opera in this place.
You know, in ancient Greece, they created this theater, this ritual, under the stars, where people gathered to listen. There's music, there's singing, there's poetry. Well, of course, there's this tradition all over the earth.
POCC Pueblo is located 10 miles north of Santa Fe, New Mexico. I feel that we are one of the more traditional pueblos, and I think because we're so close to Santa Fe, we're a hidden gem. People drive on the highway on 285 and they have no idea where we are. They see the casino, they see the gas station, they see the signs, but they don't even know that across the road, across the river, is our village. We are a small pueblo, close to 580 tribal members. So we are very, very close-knit community. And we continue to do, you know, what we need to do on a daily basis for our community. And that's what we always talk about is, you know, having that, our core values and, you know, the respect for each other and, you know, that our tribal leaders are there for our community, for our tribal members, for our children.
Our interests, you know, we met within our pueblo. We met during our feast days, and from there, we became husband and wife. And after that, she told me she was involved with the opera, Santa Fe Opera, and that's how I got involved with it. So if it wasn't for my wife, I wouldn't be here today. That's my cousin right there. It's actually grown on me. So I really love it. I love what I do.
Especially when it comes with the Santa Fe Opera, you know, we have our governor and lieutenant governor, Governor Chavarria and Lieutenant Governor Naranjo that have always been big advocates for the Santa Fe Opera.
When the opera first came, I must have been 10 years old maybe, and my mom was a chaperone, my aunties. I remember the buses picking us up, the school bus, and I think one of the most important things that I still hold on to this day is that we had to get dressed up. The Pueblo people of Santa Clara have been here since time of memorial. In 1540, when the Europeans made first contact here with our Tewa people, we still occupy this beautiful homelands, our ancestral homelands of Puye Cliffs. This is our classroom. This is our biological classroom. This is our pharmacy. This is our grocery store where we hunt, where we gather plants. With the fires that we've had and the flooding that we've faced. And so us as Tewa people, Santa Clara people, we're resilient. And we have to continue to be resilient in order for us to continue to live on for the future. And we do this for the unborn, the ones that have yet not have come to this earth, but are in the visions of people.
San Ildefonso Pueblo, Bohogeo Winge, which translates to being split. By that I mean our Pueblo is divided by the Rio Grande. And there's a east side and west side. It is located, I would say about maybe 25 to 35 miles from Santa Fe. And then there's the town of Los Alamos, which we share boundaries with. And that's mostly government. That was our ancestral land, which was taken away from us because of the Cold War effort. Our peoples back then were told, we're just coming in to do this. It's all, hush hush, the government needs this land, and once we're done, we'll be out of here. Well, that didn't happen.
I come from Taos Pueblo, an ancient village where our people have been painted to be, hunters and gatherers and people in the mountains. And we still are the hunters and gatherers and people from a beautiful sacred mountain. This was before social media. So when my people from the Pueblo would write letters and constantly go year after year with the pride of who they are, dressed in their ceremonial traditional clothing, their blankets, and go to DC and talk to the president year after year for 50 years to get our Blue Lake back. And we finally did. It was something that we've never taken for granted.
It's for everyone. Opera's for everyone, and there's a lot of there's some kids who we took, and you'd say, "Did you love it?" And they'd say, "No," and that's fine. That's fine. But then there's one or two that will say, "I can't wait to do it again."
So Hollis wrote this poem, and it was published on the Pueblo Opera Program.
I wrote this when I was 13. Opera. Notes flowing from the paper. From the trumpets, the violins, the string, the woodwinds. Opera. Singers melodiating the notes. Sweet notes from long ago, far away. Written by a mortal, but sounding like a god. Stories of love, of triumph. Stories of revenge. Always different, well-known operas. Carmen, La Noche de Figaro, speak to you. Fairy tales played out before you. You sit wondering, it ends.
I am currently 12, and I have fun coming to the opera. Just fun to sit here and watch. Knowing that you're Native American and getting to be involved with a lot of things, with like feast day and dancing. You can heal a lot of people too with the dances that you bring.
As a dancer and a performer, it's
One thing I really love about that is sharing with others, and so it really brings joy to me just to share with people and make them smile. I've been going to the opera since I was maybe 10 or 11 years old. The one thing I really like about the opera is the scenery and just how all the operas are attended during the evenings, which is the most beautiful time there. I am from the Navajo Nation, Okewinge, Pueblo, and Hopi.
What they could do with that stage and how they can make it so diverse. It always blew my mind how they would come up with different ideas for that. That did influence my own work. I went on to grad school to learn about sculpture and installation art.
The opera started the drawing contests, and we got excited about drawing something from the opera that we had just seen, and then we could submit the drawings, and they would put them in pamphlets. And so either that year or the following year, you'd open the pamphlets and you'd get to see your drawings of that opera in there, and that made us feel more part of the whole thing too.
Friends here in Santa Fe would ask me, aren't you intimidated by, being on the opera board? I wasn't intimidated because I had traveled to different countries, spending Christmas Eve in Leakey, Texas, Up with People, and the 3 astronauts, the ones that went to the moon, Shepard, Aldrin, and White, sat at tables with the King of Norway. I just would like to congratulate the opera for reaching out to the Pueblos, because this is our homeland. They're surrounded by us. And the opera's in our backyard is what I used to tell the kids all the time.
The Pueblo Opera Program was part of the Guild's portfolio, their programs, which is our volunteers. And so when Connie stepped back, there was not going to be another person like Connie Sosigasan. So we thought about, okay, let's invite many people that are associated with the program or volunteering for the program to form an advisory.
I came to teach at the Indian school, and being there, the librarian, Alana McGrattan, knew that I was interested in the opera program, and so she introduced me into the Pueblo Opera Program advisory. Being a Pueblo woman and to see the future of all the students, to provide them as many opportunities as they can have, and then just to see the faces of those that spark a light.
I'm really thankful for what the program has done so far, especially personally, because aside from the Lensic really starting my intrigue into dance, it was the continuation of the opera programs and the opera nights put on by the Pueblo that sort of continued that and gave me a different perspective on what it means to perform and to be a performer and an audience member.
Being a Native American fashion designer, I feel that there is strength that we get from Mother Earth. And you can see that very apparent in the architecture of the Santa Fe Opera. So as a child, I've always created looking at what is outside and then bringing it around me, and then having that beautiful softness, very ethereal feeling to bring about strength and to bring about celebrating beauty without any fear.
I give all the credit to the coordinators and the parents and the tribal leaders, because, without their help, something like this wouldn't exist and we couldn't have carried it on.
I have been the Pueblo Opera Program coordinator pretty much half my life for Santa Clara. My brother was working in recreation at the time and he couldn't do it that summer, and he asked me, hey, you like stuff like this, why don't you go take a stab at this? And I was like, well, okay, I'll try, and kept it since. And I've seen kids become parents now and they're taking their kids, and I've seen grandparents taking their grandkids.
This is my first time back. It's been Wow, probably 90, 93. I guess this is one of the world's greatest opera settings. It's good to have this opportunity for us as Pueblo people to come out and see what it's all about for free. I'm from Picaris, Pueblo. I'm the lieutenant governor.
This is our first, pretty much our big outing since, COVID, and we're really happy to be here.
I'm with the language team. We teach our language at the Pueblo. I've never been here, so this is going to be a first-time experience.
And welcome to the Santa Fe Opera.
When I was the liaison for the POP program, it was kind of a cool way to be able to really get to meet people, like different coordinators and youth from all over the whole state.
The summertime, we put together a summer enrichment program called the SMART, Summer Math and Reading Team. This summer, we have 17 students. They went over the synopsis of Barbara Seville in class. The gentlemen went and got their tuxedos. They've been wearing them for a couple hours. They are on top of the world. We've been bringing students here since 2002.
I'm from the Hickory Apache Nation, and we drove about 2 hours to get here. I've never been to an opera, and I think it's a good experience that we go to somewhere where it's kind of serious and you appreciate the type of creativity that's in this play.
I've never been to an opera either, so I think it'll be pretty cool to see.
I'm also from the Hickory Apache Reservation, and I've never been to an opera, but I think it's good that we dressed up.
It was fun to watch all the actors play their role, and the setting was awesome. Getting the experience of an opera's format and seeing the different things that an opera can give is quite amazing. I really hope to come and see another play. The music was spectacular, and the atmosphere was calm. Having to be outside and feeling the cool air is wonderful.
Do you know the land acknowledgement is something that really grew out of the production of Dr. Atomic?
And I think that kind of brings it all full circle. The Tsuki Pueblo Casino development, Dr. Atomic in 2018, the Santa Fe Opera's position, official position, and real authentic position about the Tsuki Pueblo Casino development was one of support. We were obviously concerned. It brought us to the next level of our relationship with Tsuki Pueblo. The opera's administration at the time, Charles McKay, Robert Maya, some folks from production, they attended several tribal council meetings at Tsuki Pueblo. The administration was exposed, I think really for the first time, learning about the old hurts of colonialism. That they're not old, they're real.
Are inadequate. It could be a catastrophe.
Coming to Santa Fe to work on Dr. Atomic with people who have lived there for generations. And I think for me, the beauty of the experience was all the conversations, was the stories of the scientists are there, the stories of Pueblo people are there, the stories of downwinders are there, the stories of U.S. military and social history are there, the stories of the government of secrecy are there. All of these layers of stories are there, and they're all sharing the same time and space.
I had the opportunity a few years ago to attend a master class here that was being done by Peter Sellars. One of the things he spoke about was Mozart. He said at the very core, Mozart was about reconciliation. I was actually working on a project here in Santa Fe, which was pulling back the layers, trying to understand how we can tell stories better. if opera can teach us, can invite us into a story that creates empathy, that shows us about complexity, then I actually think it's doing its job. It's doing what a story can do.
My old brittle bones.
My breathing is labored like the whisper of a breeze that brushes past me.
As if it was a black snake that liked to choke my limbs into submission.
A violation of my sanctity and mentality. A separation that puts a price tag to a splintered frame. A repetitive broken promise of tomorrow will be better.
Numb fingertips trace, hold old memories, old stories.
Like a temple that will crumble in your hands, it withers away. Bruises that are left on beaten down land become my signature on a death certificate.
My skin will bleed into the water the moon reflects off of. A greener pasture that forgets what the sun means.
My body becomes a torn canvas. Colors that don't belong appear, along with sketches of hope that never made a masterpiece.
In this episode of Key Change, a Native American corn dance on stage at the opera? We're talking with Renee Roybal and Claudine Martinez from the Pueblo of San Ildefonso about the Pueblo Opera Cultural Council and collaborating with legendary director Peter Sellars on Dr. Atomic at the Santa Fe Opera.
When you go to LA these days, you still go see Peter. And you have lunch and you send me awesome pictures.
We were approached by some individuals that had told us that they're making an opera about Dr. Atomic, but they were going to do it at the Santa Fe Opera, and they wanted to include a dance, a traditional dance. My first thought was, oh my God, what are they going to do? The choreographer, which was Emily Johnson, and along with the director, Peter Sellars, and she was wanting to know what we could do or what we could describe as a dance. But as we were talking, somebody just said out of the blue, well, why can't you guys do a dance?
So we were meeting with Peter. We were talking about this for like 2 years. We all agreed there was 3 pueblos, Tusuki, San Ildefonso, and Santa Clara. So it wouldn't be so sacred of our other dances that we do at home. We agreed to do the corn dance because all 3 pueblos do corn dance in the fall and in the summertime.
But a lot of people went to the opera and got to see us perform, which I was really excited for because I've never performed in the opera, so it was a really exciting and awesome experience for me. Corn dance is about you just blessing the pueblo and the spirits with corn. When we dance, we're helping the corn grow for people to make cornmeal. And before we dance, they always sprinkled cornmeal on us as a blessing, and they always say a prayer before we dance.
I went home, and lo and behold, my neighbor next door, who loves the opera and is also a drummer for our pueblo, was walking across to his mom's house, and I was like, Eric, buddy, old pal, I have something
Eric
to ask
Fender.
you. Yeah, Eric Fender. And I was like, how would you like to be in an opera? And he's like, oh, okay. And I go, and we agreed to do corn dance, and my niece Desiree really wanted to do it. I was thinking of little kids. The other cousin came over to visit. I asked him, he's all sure. So, because he liked going to the opera. I said, oh, and by the way, practice starts in 2 days. Jordan and Lyle from Santa Clara ended up creating a new song, very beautiful. OK Wenge was having their feast day. And so the director, Peter Sellars, the assistant director, Emily, and Julia.
Oh, yeah, Julia Bullock.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they drove up and they got in my car and I took them to the plaza and they saw the dances. I took them to a couple houses to eat and they were fascinated about it. They got to see the culture and where we were coming from on our end. It was interesting how it all evolved, and it was a month and a half of whirlwind shows. And to go back to the past, when we were kids growing up going to the opera, always rained. It always rained. There was always either the first opera or the second opera where it would pour. And that was before they had it covered. So you had to take your raincoat or you'd just expect to get soaked. But that year for Dr. Atomic, it poured.
But I do remember hearing people at the grocery store at Market Street talking about that opera.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
They're like, oh my God.
It wasn't available to the Pueblo Opera.
It wasn't available to the Pueblos.
Yeah.
What was it called? Atomic something?
Dr. Atomic.
Dr. Atomic.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And it was a fun experience because we got to go like actually backstage and go with the crowd and be with them. Yeah.
And they were just amazed by just your experience.
Yeah.
What you brought to the stage.
Mhm.
Yeah.
They
It was cool.
Like your music and your culture, your
Yeah.
dress and your costumes,
Yeah.
just like their stage of
Yeah.
their costumes.
Oh yeah.
And we made history, and we sold out I think all shows.
I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on any negative experiences from that, in terms of the learning curve that the opera had around its own cultural competencies.
There was a couple of times where we were butting heads because we weren't all there together. Opera singers, they don't sing full voice right away because they're saving it. I said, these guys are going to save it, and don't worry, when it comes to showtime, they'll put it out.
Renee she's one person in my life, even beyond the Pueblo Opera Program, who keeps me real. And I appreciate Renee very much so. So have at it.
I will keep it real, and not to put a damper on anything, but everything was great about the Dr. Tomic. And the dancers came on stage, started their ceremonial dance, but the audience was not respectful. They were carried on. There was loud chatter. The next performance, it would get even better. There was more, respect, responsibility, and it was announced also. And so they kind of got into the realm of things.
You helped us figure out what to put on the CBAC translations.
Yes.
To tell the folks who came into the theater pre-show, but then also what to tell the ushers. So we were deeply grateful for that.
We didn't have no disrespect for our native people. We were talking about the tablitas and their design. There was one person that didn't like one particular tablita that depicted a mushroom-type cloud. This was supposed to be the famous cloud of the atomic bomb. There's different designs, and yes, it could have meant that. But then it could have meant a flower or something blooming out of this. Through all out this, we survived. We're survivors of this.
What if the opera did their own dance? What if the opera put something else on, and we're part of that. That's Pueblo Opera Program. We talked to who we needed to talk to. I'm just glad that we did it as true Pueblo Opera, true Pueblo people.
From the Pueblo Opera Cultural Council of Santa Fe Opera, Claudine Martinez and Renee Roybal.
I was tasked with bringing in food for the dancers, and what I brought in was not good enough for them. I was bringing in trail mix, bottled water, and Renee and Claudine taught me pretty quickly, it needed to be more substantial because dancing is physical. And so everyone from all the Pueblos started bringing in food that they made, and we'd all take turns, and it kind of became like this happening. To me, it felt almost like a feast day when they invite me into their homes in their pueblos. And artists like Ryan McKinney and Julia Bullock would start coming by during intermission because they heard there was this food backstage, and there was these interesting conversations happening, and the kids and the dancers were having so much fun.
And to see there's a reciprocal of what we can give to an opera company instead of the opera company always feeling like it comes in and rescues communities and provides them with quality and culture. Just to see that shift and to lift up the culture of different nations made me so happy. And I have to tell you today, I feel like my ancestors are beaming behind me.
I was so sad. I remember being so sad. I remember being like, wow, all that's over, because I met a bunch of friends during that time. My most favorite memory of Dr. Atomic was just hanging out in the little music room. I don't know why. Being on stage and knowing that hundreds of eyes are just on you oh, that's so cool. Yeah. Just being Tewa, dancing, praying is just who I am. And if I ever just stop doing it, I don't know what I would do. I love my culture so much. I'm so proud of being Native American. I love being Tewa, Karis, and Shoban.
So yes, this was probably one of the greatest high points, not just of Dr. Atomic, but of my adult life. I mean, Claudine, it was overwhelming. It was just overwhelming. And the decision to really say the statement is the future. The decision that the group made was to put the young people forward and to say, this is not about the elders have a message for you. The message is coming from the youngest of us, who are clear, articulate, committed, focused, and joyous.
So we're really excited about bringing voices of the council into that conversation about opera and creating opera, and where is it happening? Where are Indigenous voices in that dialogue? Where is it happening? Where is it not happening?
Marita Hines from Tsuzuki Pueblo. She now sits on the Santa Fe Opera Board.
The February meeting in 2022 is when they officially elected me. I've met some really, really extraordinary people, and making me feel that I'm valid and that my voice is valid and that it's important.
As we look to the future, how can the opera be a better neighbor? How can the opera learn also from the ways and the traditions of our neighbors, so that there's really a reciprocal component to it?
That's really what we are. That's what this whole group is. We're those ambassadors for our community, because we're the ones that bring all the input here, and then eventually we're going to pass it on to somebody else.
And we're wanting other operas around the world to also be opening their doors to all of their Indigenous people.
Pueblo, native Indigenous operas here that are written by Indigenous people, possibly sung in an Indigenous language.
Bringing new endeavors from our youth, just going on for generations. And I really hope that this perseveres.
Tonight is actually quite lovely. It's a beautiful weather, and patrons have all been really friendly and talkative tonight. It's just been an incredible experience this summer, and to be out here tonight in the beautiful New Mexican weather.
The big news, of course, is the commissioning of the new work by Native American creators entirely. And that is something that we're just so thrilled to be able to do and really to be able to collaborate on. So this is a 3, 4, 5-year process of putting an opera together, but one that we are so pleased to be able to announce in conjunction with the 50th anniversary of the Santa Fe Opera's Pueblo Opera Program.
That one was good too.
Awesome.
That was awesome.
That was really good.
I liked that even though they were, it was based in the 1800s, they still had phones, computers, and headphones. And the vacuum.
When I first saw it, the characters, I thought it was cool. And it was beautiful. All the music was playing and I liked it a lot. But it was kind of loud for my ears, but it was cool and lovely.
My Tewa name is Lake Flower.
Navi unta Quanta Pepovi. My name is Rainbow Flower.
Oh, Papu Ayahama. My native name is Water Lily.
Now Povi Martinez, I'm an indigenous Pueblo woman from the Tewa tribe of San Ildefonso Pueblo.
My Indian name is Kunyopovi, berry or flower on a tree.
My Tewa name, Pueblo Tewa name is Gawadi, which means opening leaf.
Newe Newavi Pujet or Hoe Keat or Vitunjo Ho na Hapo Ongepe Tantiki Sedo Hagit Namu Wagiri. My Indian name is Pujensa, named after this sacred area.